morning, all. Thank you very, very much for coming, you guys. It's terrific to see you this morning for one of our favorite breakfasts, and this is one we started a couple of years ago with our town government. And at this particular time of year, with the town rep meeting happening this coming weekend, this is the most opportunity. We try to schedule it for the week before, and we were able to do that to secure the services of our town manager and finance director. It's been a great year, and in many ways in Brattleboro, certainly the most unusual year. And I know that the folks are going to be meeting about a lot of issues that are usual and probably unusual going forward for the next year with the budget. So without further ado, you want to hear from them, not me, so I'd like to introduce our town manager, Barbara Sondag, and our finance director, John O'Connor.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you for having us. I'm actually we're going to talk about the budget and talk about finances, yesterday's, today's, and tomorrow's. And then we're going to talk about some other projects and other things we have going on in town. And so I'm going to kick it over to John O'Connor to talk about the numbers.
Thank you, Barb. Good morning, everyone. Everybody hear me okay? Yes. All right, good. Today I'm going to talk about 4 different financial topics. I'll begin with a review of the financial highlights from fiscal year 2011, which ended last June 30th. Then I'll discuss the financial impact of Tropical Storm Irene on the town, followed by an overview of the finances of the wastewater upgrade project. And I'll end with a brief discussion of the 2013 general fund budget. You're going to hear a lot of numbers this morning, but my hope is that this presentation will give you a better understanding of Brattleboro's financial picture. So let's get started. Fiscal year 2011 financial highlights. The general fund closed fiscal year 2011 with a fund balance of $1.7 million, an increase of $317,000 from the prior fiscal year. Of the $1.7 million fund balance, approximately $1 million was unassigned and available to be used for unforeseen expenditures. The unassigned fund balance was equal to 7% of the town's expenditures. The desirable range for unassigned fund balance is at a minimum between 5 and 10% of our expenditures, so we were right in the middle of the range. This unassigned fund balance was extremely helpful in dealing with the financial pressures caused by Tropical Storm Irene, which we'll talk about in a minute. The general fund showed revenues of $13.9 million and $13.6 million in expenditures. Of the $13.9 million in revenues, $12.7 million was raised by property taxes. Our largest expenditures were for employee benefits, $2.2 million, the police department, $2.2 million, fire department at $1.6 million, $1.4 million for public works, and $1 million for recycling and solid waste disposal. The general fund closed the year with revenues that were $72,000 over budget and expenses that were $286,000 under budget, producing an overall favorable budget variance of $358,000. The utilities fund had revenues of $4.1 million and expenditures of $3 million, producing a surplus of $1.1 million. This large surplus is an attempt to build our cash reserves and moderate future rate increases in anticipation of future bond payments related to the wastewater upgrade project. The parking fund showed revenues of $858,000 and expenditures of $841,000, producing a surplus of $17,000. So I know that's a lot of numbers to try and remember, but the one thing to remember about fiscal year 2011 is that financially it was a very strong year for the town. So let's talk a little bit about the financial impact of Tropical Storm Irene. According to our current estimates, the total cost of the town to repair the damage from Tropical Storm Irene is $2 million, of which $1.6 million will be paid for by FEMA and the Federal Highway Administration. $250,000 will be paid for by the state and $150,000 by the town. These estimates include the cost to repair or replace damaged bridges, roads, and utility infrastructure throughout the town. Nearly $500,000 in these repair and replacement costs will not be incurred in this fiscal year. So far, the town has not had to scramble to borrow funds to pay for Irene-related costs because we've been able to use the unassigned fund balance as a source of funding. Not included in this estimate is $80,000 in damage to the parking garage, which was covered by insurance. The estimate also does not include $60,000 in property tax abatements for properties that were lost or damaged during the storm. While the financial impact of Tropical Storm Irene on the town was significant, it's the human toll and the loss of homes and businesses that is most troubling. Town personnel continue to work with residents and businesses to assist them with their recovery efforts. And so let's do a little bit of a financial overview on the wastewater treatment plant upgrade. The wastewater treatment plant upgrade project is one of the largest projects ever undertaken by the town. The project's estimated price tag is $32.8 million. $27.6 million in funding for this project has been secured from 4 different funding sources. A $3.6 million bond with an American Recovery and Reinvestment Act subsidy of $1 million. A $10.1 million bond from the Clean Water State Revolving Fund with $1 million subsidy. A $13.5 million Recovery Zone Economic Development Bond and a $250,000 grant from the Clean Energy Development Fund. In addition to the $27.6 million in funding already secured, the Vermont Agency of Natural Resources has promised the town an additional $4 million in funding next year from the Clean Water State Revolving Fund. As of today, $14.6 million has been drawn from these funding sources to pay for the project. And finally, let's wrap up with a little bit about the 2013 general fund budget. And the proposed general fund budget for fiscal year 2013 is a balanced budget with $14.6 million in revenues and $14.6 million in expenditures. Of the $14.6 million in revenues, $13.2 million is generated from property taxes, representing 90% of our revenues. Property taxes next year include a 1% increase in the municipal tax rate, which is a little over 1 cent. The largest expenditures are for employee benefits, $2.7 million, the police department at $2.3 million, fire department at $1.7 million, $1.4 million for public works, and recycling and solid waste disposal at $1 million. The budget for capital expenditures that are funded with cash from the general fund dropped from $1.1 million this fiscal year to $474,000 next year. This reduction is a clear indication of the pressures that we faced trying to prepare a responsible budget which included only a minimal increase in the tax rate. In summary, the town of Brattleboro is experiencing only modest increases in the grand list, while expenditures continue to increase. To produce a balanced budget, discretionary expenditures must be reduced, or the tax rate has to be increased. In fiscal year 2013, the budget was balanced by significantly reducing capital expenditures and increasing the tax rate modestly. Capital expenditures cannot be put off indefinitely, so efforts need to be placed on trying to grow our grand list and identifying other revenue sources in order to minimize future rate increases. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'll turn it back to Barb.
Thank you. talk about with regard to projects. We have a lot of projects going on, and as John touched on, the wastewater treatment plant is one of those very large projects. That should be done this year, towards the end of the year, and it's actually been, at this point, we've been on budget and on time, and we have not touched the contingency. And so that project's been going very well. We will be, about last week they started some of the work at the Union Station project. That's a project that was started in, I think, 1850. And it has. We started last week. They started doing some of the groundwork out there. The gas works building will be coming down. Was scheduled for this week, might be next week. The first week of work out there was we ran into ledge, we broke a water pipe, and we found more hazardous materials in the gasworks building. But other than that, it's going pretty well. And what we're hoping is that after these first few bumps, that we will be able to get the gasworks building down. The scale house will be coming down. It's a big brownfield because of the work that was done there before with the gasworks building where they did the gasification. And so it has a lot of restrictions and a lot of coal tar in there. And so instead of digging down and putting in the park, we're actually putting down a fiber and actually putting about a foot of ground on top of it and building it up. It's going to open up. It'll be the only place really in Brattleboro that will have, you'll be able to see the riverfront from the downtown area. And for years, the towns along the river have turned their backs to the river because of what it was used for, going back to that wastewater treatment plant upgrade. And now we can actually open up that river. And I think it'll be a nice addition. 2011, it was a good year to be gone. It was had a lot of issues. We have and those problems are still with us. The Brooks House is a reminder that we still have a huge hole in our downtown, and that hole has bled into some of the other properties downtown. When you lose one whole section on one side of the street, you don't get the same foot traffic on that side of the street. And so we have, in a year in which the economy wasn't good, we had that hole which reduced some of our pedestrian traffic on that side of the street particularly. And so we've continued to work with the owner of the property, trying to figure out how we can assist with getting that property up and running. One of the things to keep in mind when you have an old building like that, the costs to renovate and restore that building are the same costs to do it here as it would be to renovate and upgrade in Burlington. But guess what? Rents aren't really the same. You don't get as much rent down here. So it becomes very difficult for private property owners to do renovations on old buildings and be able to do that in a way in which they continue to be profitable going forward. And so that's one of the struggles that we face with this big building. We have a lot of big buildings that require some reuse. The Arch Street building has been sitting vacant for several years. The Tri-State building has been vacant for many years, and that hopefully will be coming down this year. Again, another big brownfield, a lot of hazardous materials that have seeped into the brick there. But so looking at redevelopment of some of these old buildings is going to always require a private-public partnership. And I look forward as we continue to work with private property owners to try to put these buildings back in use. We, as John indicated, we continue with the work from the flooding, resulting from the flooding. Most of our public works infrastructure work is actually completed. We still have a few projects that are not done, but there's been with the mild winter particularly, we were able to make a lot of headway. And so we've been doing well with that. The other work that we're doing is we still have properties that are in the floodway and in the floodplain that we need to have a plan for. The property, part of the properties of Glen Park, of Mountain Home Trailer Park, of the Housing Authority. You know, where we're at now with those projects is actually the harder part, is trying to look at planning for the future. And how do we get people out of harm's way? How do we get people out of the floodway? But at the same time, recognizing that when you're with your tri-park, it's a cooperative. They have to figure out, okay, how can we, they can't just say, well, we'll just get rid of these 60 mobile homes, because that's rent. And if you recall, Tri-Park just recently had a $7 million water and sewer upgrade. So they too are trying to balance how to keep people out of harm's way and at the same time stay financially solvent. And the same is true with Brattleboro Housing Authority. And again, it's a situation in which I don't think a private business is going to be really able to do it on their own. It's a huge problem, and it's going to be a costly problem. What we've been working on, hazard mitigation funding came in. It was kind of billed as a lot of money that could be used for mitigating issues, and we found that was actually a lot harder. Hazard mitigation grants are based on the idea that there's got to be a cost-benefit analysis done, and it works really well if you're in areas that are prone to flooding. But if you're not in areas prone to flooding, you didn't qualify for a lot of money. So we do have 9 projects that we're moving forward with, but we're really waiting for community development block grant funding, specifically for the flood, that we can apply for, and that we will be applying for planning grants. And the planning grants would be to look at alternatives and look at possibilities for how do we, working with the private landowner, work to get people out of the floodway. So that's going to be a multi-year project. That's going to take some time. John talked a little bit about needing to grow the grand list, and I would say we need to grow the grand list. We also need to develop better jobs in our region. And we talked about the county last year when I was here. I talked a little bit about the Southeast Vermont Development Economic Development Strategies Group, and that group continues to work. SEBEDS, it's organized itself. It's now an actual official entity under the umbrella of the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation. It has a board, and it also it's applying for its first grant through EDA. That money, if we receive it, will be used to develop a comprehensive economic development strategies, which is essentially development of how are we going to grow the economy here? What are the strategies? Where are our assets, and what are the strategies we're going to use to develop the economy in the county? I think that one of the SEBEDS has several task force that work under it. One is they have a young professionals group. We have the redevelopment group. There is drawing a blank on all the different groups, looking at Drew. Workforce development group, which is one of our biggest focuses, is how do we improve the workforce here so that when jobs become available, we have a well-trained, qualified workforce in there to fill the jobs. I think anybody who's an employer here knows that a A lot of times it takes you a couple tries to get that employee that's going to stay with you. And there was also a post-BY group, and that group recently, last week, reported its findings. And what it asked for was the fact that when Entergy BY closes, which could happen, we're not taking a position on when that is, but they're a major employer, and it's going to drastically impact our economy. And so we need to be planning on how we're going to create other jobs in this region. And we should be doing that anyway. We should be doing it. We want a better balanced economy here. We shouldn't have one industry, and we here kind of feel like, well, we have Entergy, and you go to Dover, and they have Mount Snow, they have Stratton. They too are focused on one entity, one business that their economy relies on. And that's not a good way for us to be. We need to be looking at other ways of attracting businesses and helping businesses that are here grow. And we should be able to do that without, that should be a conversation that we're able to have without getting into the politics of existing businesses. Because the reality is, we should all have that as a goal to diversify and grow our economy. And so that's one of the things that Sevens is working on as well, is to, we're going to start seeking additional funding, and a lot of that funding is going to be working to continue the analysis of our region. What are the businesses that are here? What are the clusters that we have here that rely and work well with each other? And how do we then grow those and attract others? One of the other projects that we have going on that we're just starting to become a little more public on is our police fire facilities project. That too was started in about 1849, and before I leave, one of these two projects will be complete. The facilities, the building facilities of our police department, both Central and Station 2, and of our police department are in poor shape. And what I stress with that is this isn't maintenance that we haven't done. These aren't, oh, we can just, if we put some money in, we can improve this. These are actual health, safety, and structural issues that we're facing. In our police department, I will, if anyone wants to go into any of these buildings and have a look for themselves, please just show up. We'll give tours. We will be planning some open houses to show folks. The police department, we have 4 cells. And we have to have these holding cells. If we don't have the holding cells, we actually end up having to take people up to Springfield or take somebody else. We typically have 3 to 4 officers on. If we transport a prisoner somewhere, that takes 2 of our officers off the streets. So having a holding cell is really important for our police department. To get to that holding cell, though, if you come in, if you are a guest of a police officer, you will be escorted out of a car, aided up 4 steps, at which point you will then enter the building and you will wait while the police officer secures his or her gun, and then you will walk down 12 steps. You will make a turn to the right and you will walk down about 4 more steps, and then you're in the basement of the municipal center where the cells are. Someone's going to get hurt. You can't have the holding cells downstairs. We have issues with a lot of our guests are compliant, and a lot of our guests are just stinking drunk, and not the officers, but somebody is going to get hurt. The other issue we have is police officers have to keep records for almost forever, and actually in some cases forever. We went down to get evidence from an old case 2 weeks ago. Got brought up 3 boxes of evidence, and there was black mold in every box. We got to get those records out. We have to get them in a place that's better. The Central Fire and the Station 2, they have similar issues. One is they were built in the 40s and in the 60s when equipment was a lot smaller. We just did a bid for a fire engine. We received 3 bids. We spec it out. We say exactly what we need. We got 3 bids back. One of the bids produced an engine that would fit in our fire station, and it wasn't the low bid. We also have a central fire. There's a basement underneath it. Because of the weight and size of the equipment, we're starting to see some structural issues because it's not really made. It wasn't made for this size of equipment. And if you ever want to have fun, watch them pull back in the engines and the ladder truck. When they pull in the ladder truck, you have about 2 inches at the top and on each side. If you go really fast, you'll always make it. And Pete Lynch never drives. So we've taken the old studies. We have found, we probably have 20 studies that were done over the past 30, 40 years. We've taken those. We've looked at other sites, and what we have come up with is actually each of the 3 places staying where they're at, but doing renovations and additions on the existing facilities. We'd be moving all the heavy equipment off of the old central fire station, moving it into a new section that would just be slab on grade, and then keeping some of the pickup trucks, the boat, some of the smaller equipment on in the original station. Similarly, up at West Brattleboro, we would be adding on slab on grade, larger garage for the engines up there, and then utilizing the existing for some workspace, etc. And also we would be looking at moving our emergency operations center, the primary emergency operations center, from the municipal center over to West Brattleboro Station. We'd be looking to do that because our EOC is also in the basement. And as Chief Bacassi will tell you, the biggest threat to Brattleboro is the railroad. And because of all the various materials that travel on the railroad, biggest concern is having to evacuate the downtown because of accidents on the railroad. Our EOC being downtown, all of our dispatch is in the police department right now. We do have dispatch capabilities in the EOC and the municipal center. Our dispatch dispatches police, fire, rescue, and our public works. If we had to evacuate that, we'd have to, at this point, move to a trailer and move the trailer somewhere. We have a communication trailer. So we're looking to move the EOC out to West Brattleboro. The EOC was extremely important during the flood situation. So it is actually utilized. There's about 12 of us that are in there during emergencies. And we're not hiding, we're actually working. And then the police station, we'd also be looking at doing an addition to the back of the municipal center, putting jails, actually creating a sally port, which is where the police can drive in. It's a secured area, and the cells are right there. They move the prisoners from the car into the cells directly, and it also would create a lot more storage space, and it would be storage space that we can actually store things without it getting moldy. So we're started to have some small group meetings on this. We met with the neighbors of the facilities yesterday, and we're going to start taking our show on the road, and hopefully you'll see it and support that project as well. No time is a good time to do a $12 million capital improvement project. But 2001, when this project was voted on, it was also $12 million, so we really worked to try to keep the costs down. And again, at some point this has to be, the work has to be done. Let's see. Brooks House, this summer we hope to have about a $600,000 sidewalk improvement project going on. We've got a $300,000 grant from the state, and we have matching funds for $300,000 to do sidewalk improvements in the downtown area. And that is there anything I'm missing? I think that kind of wraps up. I want to stress that this year in 2000, the calendar year, with the wastewater, we had the wastewater treatment plant project. We had additional projects of with Irene that went on. We had work we did with the fire. We had all in all, in addition to about the 15 million for the wastewater treatment plant, we had about $2 million in additional grants that came through the town. And we've done that with the same staff. And at some point, we're going to be getting a little bit stretched, and we're going to really need to start looking at and prioritizing what do we do next, because it's every grant that we have requires additional work in our finance department and additional work in our departments. And at some point we need to just really kind of start thinking about what are our priorities. I think that's one of the things we're going to be working with the board, is the board is very interested in setting specific goals this year. And I think that's going to be a very important process for us, because we need to really get on the same page and to decide, okay, where are we going with the town? What's important, and where do we really want to invest what continues to be limited funds? So with that, if you guys have any questions for me or for John.
Hello? Yes.
Yeah, just one remark. Thank whoever the DPW got up the pedestals in the crosswalks on Western Avenue. So thanks for getting that done. Separate is a question on the process to get a place selected for the downtown higher ed center. What's the status of the project or timing? How good?
Okay. What Michael's talking about is the Governor Shumlin in his budget address announced that he was requesting $2 million from the state higher ed trust fund that would then be utilized for a building of a joint CCV-VTC, so Community College of Vermont, Vermont Technical College site in downtown Brattleboro. And he was doing it to really give the downtown a shot in the arm. And also, CCV's contract or lease expires in a couple of years where they're at off of Putney Road, and they've been really hoping to get more, they've been moving more and more to street level and downtown areas so that they're more visible and so it's easier for people to get to. The governor then asked Martha O'Connor if she would head up a committee to kind of start looking at sites. So it was a committee of one. And then Martha asked myself, Jeff Lewis, and Art Greenbaum to join her. So now it's a committee of 4, and which is good because you can sit around a small table at a bar. And that was a joke. We can, and we've been looking at various sites. The issues we've met thus far, what we're trying to do is work with CCV, VTC, the chancellor, and find out what are their program needs, what additional programs can they bring to this area, and then also, because that's going to determine what size, etc. Also working, and then at the same time is the legislature is reviewing the bill that would actually fund that. It's gone from $2 million down to $1 million, and it is, so it's a struggle in the legislature to get that money. So it's a great opportunity for Brattleboro if you see your local legislators. We had a meeting with our local legislators last week to talk to them about this, to talk to them about the need. One of the things that we found through the Southeastern Vermont Economic Development Strategies Group is that where we are lacking in our workforce is in associate degree and in technical degree persons. And so this is actually just a perfect fit for us. So we're really hoping that it takes off. At this point, then there is no kind of site decided upon. The college folks they actually were introduced to Brattleboro a few weeks back. They went around, they looked at, obviously when you're looking, if it's defined as the downtown area, you're a little bit more restricted as to where you might go, but there are several buildings that might work. I think they're looking for about 20,000 square feet. So that's where that's at. And we're hoping that it's a little chicken and egg, but we're really watching the legislature and trying to get that funding through the bodies.
Any other questions? Thank you. I have one, yes, just a surprise, Barb. One of the committees that I sit on for representing the chamber is the Traffic Safety Committee. And of course, lately we know that the work of that committee has become well in the forefront of what it is that we talk about around town. The last meeting that we had, I really want to acknowledge Barb and Jean and Mike Bukasi for sitting prior to the meeting and really analyzing the situation with what's been happening on Western Avenue and other arteries in town with traffic accidents and fatalities, unfortunately. Could you comment a little bit about that, Barb?
No. Yes. Actually, since that meeting, we were, the staff has been charged with looking at continuing to analyze our infrastructure as well as look at development of an education program. To that end, I've met with representatives from AERP, the Vermont Department of Health, and we have worked to identify some plans for identifying areas where citizens have concerns and getting folks out there doing some surveys on the ground and coming up with some possible enhancements. We've also looked at, and so we expect that those things to happen in the first week of May. We look to be partnering with Safe Routes to Schools or some other pedestrian bike coalitions to assist with an actual education program. We have purchased kind of some of the flashing lights that pedestrians can also wear so that they're more visible at night. This is a three-legged stool. I've been criticized for blaming the pedestrians. I've been criticized for blaming the drivers, and I've been criticized for saying there's nothing the town can do. And I don't think I said any of those things, but I can understand how people may hear that. Because it's a three-legged stool. It takes the pedestrians, it takes the drivers, and it takes the town. And as far as the town goes, Steve Barrett with Public Works, we've reviewed our painting schedule, we've reviewed our signage, we've reviewed our street lights. We will be making some changes. We will be doing some additional analysis of those locations. Should there be additional crosswalks? The paint that we use is not the cheapest paint, and so, but we are looking at other paint options. Steve was just informing me today of the chemical mix of our paints that we use for line striping, and it explains a lot about Public Works. We will, there are other things that can be done with regard to what we're really looking at here is how do we all have a similar goal, and that's for it to be safe for pedestrians, bicyclists, and motor vehicles to share the road. That's got to be our common goal. And we all have to have assumed that as our goal. I'm hoping that as we move forward, we can continue some of the work that we've started. One of the things Jerry talks about is the Traffic Safety Committee. It's a really important committee. Any stop sign, any crosswalk, any one-way, any no parking goes through traffic safety and then goes to the board as an ordinance change. Over the past several years, we've added crosswalks. We had a request come into traffic safety. They wanted a crosswalk across Western Avenue for Solar Hill. That went through the committee, went through the ordinance, and there's a crosswalk there with the appropriate signage. We had people from Guilford Street come to say that they had a speeding problem. Speeding is one of the #1 complaints that you're going to hear in traffic safety. We went out there, we met with the residents. They had a neck down on Guilford Street. We got rid of that because it actually wasn't working. That was an experiment that was done, and it wasn't working. We got rid of it. And what we did is we put fog lines in, we added a bike lane, we added new sidewalks so that we could add a crosswalk in a different place. And I think we've improved that area. We had residents from South Main come and talk again about speed. And what we did if you look at South Main, it's very wide by the cemetery, and then it seems like it narrows as you go closer to Cotton Mill Hill. It doesn't narrow. The difference is that it looks narrower because you have parking on both sides once you get up further. So what we did is we added fog lines, again, trying to visually narrow down the street. So we are trying to address issues. When Western Avenue was repaved by the state, we added bicycle lanes wherever we could. When Putney Road was done, we added bicycle lanes where we could. We're never going to have bicycle lanes throughout the town unless we go to one-way streets. But I will say that one of our faults is we've not done it in a very systematic way. And I think that's where we need to change, is to develop a more systematic approach to increasing and to creating an infrastructure that feels safer for pedestrians and motorists and bicyclists. But there is nothing sacred. It's not a bubble when you're in the crosswalk. It's not a bubble when you're in the bike lane. And sometimes I'm concerned that people think, well, if we put a crosswalk there, it'll be safe. And I just hope people don't think that way. One of the other things is, just to bring it up because it hasn't come up yet, the Main Street Light Project. We did add a crosswalk, and we added pedestrian crossings down at Malfunction Junction. And that has really increased and improved pedestrian safety. That's not to say people don't get frustrated because they have to wait for the chirping noise, but it has increased pedestrian safety. So we continue to work with that. I encourage anybody who's interested to come. Traffic safety is going to be next Tuesday at 8:30. And so I encourage anybody who's particularly interested to come forward. The police will be starting a directed patrol campaign to this regard as well, where they will be starting to ticket vehicles that don't wait for pedestrian, vehicles that turn right on red in front of pedestrians, and that we also will be looking at pedestrians who are jaywalking. So we will be looking at an increased patrol and directed patrol for that.
Barbara, I have a business on Western Avenue. It seems like, have you ever considered either a speed bump or an inverted speed bump? Because there's a lot of out-of-state traffic on that road, and people just don't slow down. At some point, if you don't establish eye contact with the drivers, you really shouldn't walk across that road, because there's a lot of people who just don't stop, even though they're marked as crosswalks.
Western Avenue is going to be one that we look at pretty closely. It's very wide, which causes increased speed by drivers. You have a lot of traffic on it because of it being Route 9. Speed bumps were something that were put in. They're not necessarily a traffic calming device so much anymore. There's research on both sides of speed bumps, whether they actually slow traffic or not. One speed bump won't slow traffic. And so you need to look at a variety of things with that. I'm hoping that Western Avenue is one of various sections along Western Avenue is where we can get citizens to come together, working with AARP on the tool that they have to analyze and the crossings there, so that we can work together to help figure out how do we make it, how do we slow traffic, and how do we create safer crossings. We have, I think 2 years ago, we moved, it was about 2 years ago, we moved the school crossing lights and signs that were on Canal when the Canal Street School was open. We moved those to Western Avenue to try to do some traffic calming there, so that those are always flashing during the school day. But that is an issue of, 30 miles an hour is the speed limit there. And it's pretty fast. And typically, if you see speed limits at a certain, it's not unusual for people to, it's a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit, I'm going to drive 33, 35, and that really makes a difference with people's control of vehicles and what happens if you do hit something or someone.
One of the things we have is a wonderful asset is the gallery walks. And when you close the downtown, it's just heaven to me. Can you tell me how you determine when you do that?
Closing of the downtown of Main Street is, we do it relatively infrequently, really about twice a year now, Diversity Day and the strolling of the heifers. One of the couple issues with the closing of the sidewalk is, one, we want to make sure closing of the roadway. If the roadway is closed, we really need to ensure that it's going to be utilized, well utilized. I think if it's to close Route 5, and again, remember it's a state route, it has impacts on the traffic. One of our problems is that our main street is a state route, and so it has a lot of traffic on it. You get particularly, and we all know it has a lot of big traffic on it. So there's a lot of coordination and work that goes into closing Main Street. It takes, fire has to change kind of their routes because they're coming off Elliott Street. The police have to, last time in the strolling of the heifers, although it was better last year, we had a lot of people who were still, the pedestrians were going further and further down where the traffic still was moving. And so it was it was harder for the police to kind of keep the people in the appropriate area. We've started to meet with people and to talk with folks about, instead of closing Main Street, possibly looking at closing, like using Harmony Lot and instead, mainly because we continue to have concerns about the safety of people. But if there are events where people are wanting to close Main Street, basically the process is they meet with department heads and we discuss, what's their plan, how many people are they talking about, what's their support system, because they need to have people who can help crowd control, so they need a load of volunteers to come and assist. And then it would go forward to the select board. But that's the process.
Any other questions, anyway? Well, hearing none, I would like to thank Barb and John this morning. Please let's give them a hand for showing up and coming to a couple more thank yous. Of course, the retreat for hosting us this morning and having the wonderful breakfast that you all enjoyed, I hope. And certainly Brattleboro Memorial Hospital, who sponsored this morning's breakfast, and we'd like to acknowledge them for doing so, stepping up and helping the chamber. Once again, Steve Gordon is here. Thank you, Steve, and thanks everybody at the hospital for helping us put this breakfast on. And announce our next breakfast, which is on Wednesday, the 4th of April. And Craig Miskovich and Robin Long are going to be talking to us, and I hope all of you, and plus, about the issue of healthcare reform on state and federal levels and how it's going to impact our employers and our employees. And that's going to be one I think all of us should really be here for. So thank you for coming this morning, and look forward to seeing you on the 4th. Yes, a question?
Jerry, I hope this isn't inappropriate, but it just dawned on me that it came to my attention last night at the BUHS number 6 board meeting that the middle school is currently looking for a track coach, and I think that the need came in a little late, and so the need is really urgent. Track season starts in early April. So again, this may not be the most appropriate forum, but I know you all have a lot of contacts in the community, so if you could spread the word, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing it up.
You're
It's
welcome.
a good audience to bring it up too. Well, folks, thank you. Enjoy your day. Good to see you.